Live on Facebook now. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Journey to Business. This is your host, Melissa Walker, and we have
Jeff Camino.
Thank you for tuning in. You can also check us out on Facebook Live at Next Career Co. NEXTCAREERCO. I think I did that right. Yeah. And remember, this is a show based on reciprocity, so we love for our guests to call in and listen in or send us emails with referrals. You can call in anytime at 214-431-5062. You can also send us an email. You can check out the email address. You can get it from our website at www.j2bradio.com. This is a show where you can grow yourself, grow your career, or grow your business. Today we've got a very exciting day. We have a wonderful guest on here who's had quite a interesting background, a lot of experience, and we're here to talk about careers in criminal justice. So I don't know how I got somebody here on criminal justice. She may not realize she should probably arrest me, but whatever. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, but I wanted to welcome Lynn Holland to the show. So thank you for coming over here today, and tell us a little bit about your background so all of our guests can hear about it.
I'm really privileged that I had an opportunity to serve as a city, county, and state officer and serve internationally. And I was a local and state city officer in Oklahoma and Texas. And in that journey, I also was a probation parole officer, so I understand the corrections field, which I consider that part of the criminal justice profession. And I was recruited to come to Texas. I was told that they wanted me to cross the Red River, and so that's how I ended up in Texas. And I decided to stay here and have enjoyed the last part of my local career in Texas.
Very good, very good. And right now, if I understand correctly, you've done a lot of international things as well.
Yes. I had the privilege of serving as the first woman as an executive in a peacekeeping mission. And I went to Haiti, and I stood up the Haitian National Police and the academy there. Then I went to Bosnia, and I worked with women and men who'd been raped as an act of war. Then I went to Kosovo, and I did massacre investigations and was a human rights investigator, and I was part of an indictment with The Hague on Milosevic. And then I went to Liberia, where I stood up helped stand up the new police there also.
Wow, that's quite a lot of travel and interesting background. It sounds like you've probably seen a lot of things that we don't want to talk about.
I've seen the worst in people and the best in people.
That's good that you've gotten to see both sides.
Yes.
I think maybe the best is better, but
Well, it's just amazing. I saw ethnic cleansing, and to me that was pretty horrendous. Mm-hmm. But then I saw people from the United States who got on a plane and saw the horrendous things happening in Kosovo and got their own funding, did everything. I saw a nurse one time come with all her medical equipment, and she was just there to treat anybody that needed to be treated.
That's
and I
awesome.
thought that was just really something,
Yeah.
Not sponsored by anybody, raise your own money and come just to help because they saw a need.
Yeah. So in your background, you've done a lot of work in the recruitment part of it as well.
Yes.
And so, this show is obviously based on careers, and I'm going to try to move from the scary parts and the bad
Yes.
things you've seen to the career part, just because that's much more interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not. I don't know. Anyway, so tell us, there's a lot of talk. I know that whenever I've worked with people, from the military, because I do a lot of work in that arena, a lot of people are looking to go into the government sector, and the
Yes.
government sector is a lot different than going into the public sector, to look for a career. I think the applications are different, the process is different. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's really a lot more. It takes longer, and a lot of screening. They have to
It's
do
government.
that. Yeah. And you have to really want to do it. And so I first would recommend to somebody to go on a ride-along program where they would get in a squad car or have an opportunity to work in an agency or to be an intern to see if that's what they really want to do. But once you decide, yep, this is what I want to do, and yes, I want to make a difference, and anybody that is successful in law enforcement really wants to make a difference. That's really the key. That's the core of what I hear from everyone. And if you want to feel like that day that when you went out and you worked, you saw a change in somebody, then this is the job for you. And so you need, if you're a young person, even if you're mid-career, you need to decide on where you want to focus. And many agencies require a test. And what I would recommend for
Like
you
a physical test or
well,
aptitude
there's both.
test? Okay.
There's an aptitude like written. It depends on the agency, and so I would recommend that they find somebody that's gone through the process and to try to mentor them, because that's what I did, and it was very, very helpful to me. And because you can be successful at taking the exam, and even if you take the exam and you don't pass it the first time, take it again.
Well, let me ask a question real quick, because you
Yeah.
mentioned that you need to find somebody that's done it before and get mentored. How would you go about doing that if you were new into the field?
I would call the public relations or the community relations unit. They're always the people that want to reach out to the community, and they're more receptive. And there's a lot of police departments and sheriff's departments who have explorer programs. And so there are people that work with explorers, so there might be somebody that would be willing to mentor.
Yeah, I was assuming you didn't like dial 911 and be like, hey, can you be my mentor?
Right, right. But those are the two units that I think would, who works with explorers, who works with community outreach. I think those are the officers. They want to have good people working with them, and they would come along and help. Or you could find somebody that was retired from that agency and to see if they'd help. I was really blessed. I had men. I was up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was a probation parole officer, and I had men say, "You'd make a good cop." And I remember going, what does that mean? Because I had a college education, and I didn't want to shift work and put a uniform on.
Right.
And so I got in a patrol car, and they call it blue fever. That was it. I said, "You get paid for this?" And that's how I became a police officer. So, but in that process, I had somebody help me prepare for the exam, help me get physically fit, help me know you go through oral boards. That's what they call them. They give you situations and they ask you to answer them. And one of the things that I'd recommend to people is to answer those questions the way they truly think they should be answered, not how you think they should be answered.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I made that mistake. My first time go around, people tried to prepare me, and they said, "No, this is the answer they want." Well, but that wasn't natural to me.
Right.
And they gave me that feedback. We didn't believe your answers. It sounded like you were canned, you know. And so I recommend. And then the second time I applied, I was me.
Yeah, and it worked.
And it worked.
Well, that's
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that somebody came up alongside you and said,
Yes.
you'd be a good cop.
Yes.
So what are some of the attributes that make somebody a good cop?
You have to want to make a difference. You have to care about people. You have to want to communicate with people and be willing to do what you have to do. And you also have to be pretty level-headed, and you have to be practical in your thinking. You know, if you are somebody that wants to stay in an office, now you eventually could have a job inside, but if you don't like being out in the elements, and if you don't like working shift work, then it isn't for you. But one of the things I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to actually go down to the agency and see if they'll show you what the job really is, because what you see on CSI and what you see on on all the shows, I wish it was that easy.
I see.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and
That's a
Yes.
great point, because I'm actually kind of known for getting my sister to switch careers, because she thought she wanted to do something, which I'm not going to tell anybody not to do it, but I was like, what I think you need to do, and I tell anybody I give advice to that's younger or they want to move into a new career path, is find out what it really means, because what you think it is never what it is. So
Right.
especially with police work, like you said, it's not the shows that you see on TV. It's,
Right.
You need to go and really do some research and talk to people and understand what the job really entails. Probably a lot of paperwork at times, and different things that you may want to know about before you put your whole life into that.
There's 95% of boredom, especially if you get a shift like you're on midnights and you're in a small town, or you're in what they call a slow district, it is a long night.
Yeah.
And then you might have attempted burglary or something, 5%, and the rest is da-da-da-da-da. Directing traffic is not real exciting.
I would imagine
Yeah,
not.
No, and so there are some times when you have to realize that that's just part of the job.
Yeah. Hey, Richard, glad that you joined us. And by the way, hello, Oliver. He's the Jeff that you are too cool for headphones.
There we go.
We're talking about police work. Richard, you might enjoy this conversation. So he was a former detective. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's great. He can tell. He can chide in with me and.
Yeah, feel free to call in if you have any additional comments, Richard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so talk to us a little bit more about, we're talking about finding out what it is. So
Right.
tell us what that really is, kind of what you said, what are the skills, and then what are you really doing?
Yeah, well, you really are trying to help the community, whether it is directing traffic, taking the burglary report. You have an opportunity to save a life. There's nothing
Yeah.
better, nothing cooler than that. There's nothing more neat to find a child who's missing. And I worked a case one time when the child was missing, and he had fallen in a hole. And it took us hours and hours and hours, and we finally found him in the hole
Wow.
and got him out.
Was that the one that was on the news?
No, this was several years ago, but there's nothing better than to return a child to a parent. And so the other thing about the job that's really, there is boredom, but it's never the same.
Yeah, I bet every day is a little
Every
bit
day
different.
is very different.
And you don't know what's coming.
And you don't know what's coming. So if you want everything to be kind of status quo, this is not the profession from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So you've had kind of an interesting background. So you were able to kind of navigate through not just doing like patrol work. How were you able to navigate the system to do some of the intriguing things that you're able to do in your career?
well, there's an expression in Oklahoma called "it tain't right, but it's so," and that is what I tell women, because I was one of the first women to do very many things in law enforcement, and the tain't right, it's so is that I have to be better. And so I've had the privilege of starting my career with a degree. And now I have my master's degree.
Congrats.
And and I studied at Scotland Yard. There's very few local law enforcement in the United States that ever had that privilege.
Wow.
And so I tried, and I was selected as Officer of the Year for the state of
Yeah, I saw that on your bio.
Oklahoma. And so I didn't set out to try to get that award, but I worked really, really hard on being the best. And so if you keep working on being the best, it'll be recognized and you'll have opportunities. And I also was willing to look at doing it different and doing it better. And sometimes people get into police work because it's good pension, it's got same days off, that type of thing. And they get into status quo and don't keep pushing themselves. And so I've constantly tried to keep learning. And right now I'm learning about how to do training, police training on cell phones, and how that's going to revolutionize learning in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so I try to be progressive, and that's what I would encourage someone to do.
So it sounds like a lot of it is attitude, then a
Absolutely.
willingness to help humanity, a willingness to improve yourself, to get better.
And be the best you can so you can serve your community the best. And the other attitude you got to have is that taxpayer is your customer. And that taxpayer pays your salary.
Yeah.
And you are there to serve.
Unfortunately, though, if we don't like something that a law enforcement, we can't just be like, hey, I'm not paying my taxes this year.
Right.
So, but that is a good point that they are your customer.
Yeah, and so if you have that attitude, you're not going to get complaints, and people are going to be pleased with what you did. When I used to stop people for a traffic violation, my goal was to get them to thank me for keeping them safe.
Well, hold on. You just brought up
Yes.
a good point. How do you get out of a ticket?
What are the-
What worked for you? Just kidding.
You don't speed.
Is it crying?
You probably
Is it-
don't say, "Hey, I pay your salary."
Yeah, no one likes a ticket. I'm not going to tell you that they do, but they can tolerate it better with an officer being professional, and many officers are in handling a traffic stop.
Yeah.
So, in addition to attitude, what are some of the other attributes? Like, is there a certain education level or physical attribute?
I
or what?
recommend you go in with a bachelor's degree, because that gives you more opportunity. Plus, if you get hurt, and that happens, I was in 3 head-on collisions, and officers have to say it wasn't my fault in each time. But each time I might have been physically not able to perform as a patrol officer, but I had my brain and I had my bachelor's degree. So I really think you should have as much education as you can. I think a master's a little over, because then the police chief gets a little intimidated because you got more education than he or she does. But you have to be physically fit, and you also have to be emotionally and spiritually fit. And if you're not, you're going to go do something under stress that is not good.
Yeah.
And so they try to screen that, but I've worked on stress my whole career, and I've been really fortunate to get some really good training. But you've got to be mentally tough, and you've got to also be able to separate what you see. Seeing dead bodies, seeing people hurt, seeing rape victims, it's not fun.
No, I couldn't imagine.
So you have to be able to, I call it reframing it. For instance, if you have to do an autopsy, that's a crime scene. I always reckoned it was hallowed that was somebody's relative.
Mm-hmm.
But then I did that respect, and then I did watch the autopsy because that was important for the evidence. But if it doesn't bother you, I had a homicide detective one time tell me, if it doesn't bother you, get out.
Yeah.
And so there's the
And you're too desensitized.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a separation of, you've got to figure out, how do you see this every day and process it and not have it affect you negatively.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot about, in law enforcement, in all public service types of positions, that you also look at the PTS and things that come with some of the position, and, combating that. And I think it's not really even getting enough view right now. But with that said, is there something they train you on or teach you how to kind of keep that separate or segmented so you can deal with some of that stress?
In law enforcement now, I'm so pleased, because there's much more. If you have a critical incident, active shooter, anything like that, then there's a requirement that you go through debriefing, and depending on how involved you were, you may have to go see a psychologist. And so there's a lot more stuff in place than whenever I started in law enforcement. And all that stuff is is critical for you to keep mentally healthy. Mm-hmm. And then you talked about physically. You've got to stay in shape, because nothing's worse than having that criminal outrun you. That just really is not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have to be able to shoot well, and you have to be willing to shoot a gun. And there are some people that, that's not good for them.
Yeah.
And so, and you got to be a good shot. And so those are the attributes. And you have to eat healthy, because that helps you with stress. Mm-hmm. And it's not, you have to convince yourself to do that, because it's easier to go through the drive-through when you're on patrol. And
I know you're really combating all cliches of police officers right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Exactly.
being fit and donuts. I'm just saying that's good.
Well, and see, I don't even drink coffee, and and many police officers now don't smoke, and there's just a more standard now to stay healthy. And then if you want to be on the elite group, I was on the hostage negotiation team, and I was a hostage negotiator, and I was on SWAT.
What's that movie, The Negotiator or something, like with what's his name? Oh my gosh, it was a great movie. Is it like that? Tell me it's like that. Please tell me it is.
Well,
If I can remember the name of the movie, it might help. But
it can be very stressful,
I bet,
because
yeah.
you have to become a very good listener, and you can do everything you can, and then someone still might kill themselves, and you have to cope with that. But really enjoyed being a hostage negotiator. And when I went overseas, I ended up negotiating a ceasefire. And I didn't plan on that, but my negotiation, the things that I've learned in domestic violence negotiation and problem solving, that's another key characteristic you have to have.
Think on your feet.
Think
problem
on your
solve,
feet.
yeah.
And, you know, many times the citizens in the United States criticize their police. Well, many times they have incidences where they've got to just think on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not in the book. You just have to figure it out and do the best you can. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with real-world scenarios, and you have to guess, is there a gun there? Is there this? Is there that?
Right.
And you have to make your best assessment, and there's no book that can ever tell you how to do that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And
You added a great segue there. I've been wanting to ask, and I think probably a lot of listeners are interested. So we know that society in certain segments are at odds with the police
Right.
force. So what do you feel about that, and what are some of the
Well,
things that we can do to correct that?
I think we need more officers in the communities getting to know their neighbors, getting to know that when I studied at Scotland Yard, they do community policing. They've been doing it a lot longer than we have, and they walk. That's another problem we do, is we stay in the patrol car and we don't get out and walk, and then you get to know who's in your district. Now, right now, there's a lot of police departments that are so shorthanded that they don't get that privilege. But I think it's really important to be transparent. And many times, and agencies are changing now, but they used to not want to release a lot of things because they thought it would mess up the case or whatever. And now they're realizing that they need to be more transparent. And now with all the videos that are out, see, I'm a former officer that welcomes people videotaping because that protects me.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it goes both ways. Like, so you can see the bad thing that a police officer does, but you don't see the good thing or how they actually were in that scenario and what was really happening that made them make that assessment, you know?
I remember when I was up in Oklahoma, they put cameras in the booking area, and a lot of officers just had a fit. I welcomed them, and guess what? We had a young lady come in on PCP, and she was fighting us so horrible. She took a straitjacket and ripped it off, and you needed to see that video to really believe this. She was only 15, and it took 4 of us, and it was really difficult for us to get her to the hospital. And I'll never forget, her parents came down to complain.
Always mom and dad.
The next day, and all the police chief had to do was show this tape.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't believe it. And then it was all solved then. See,
Right.
it was all taken care of. And
Yeah.
so I think, and also the other thing about videotaping that is important is that all angles are shown, because sometimes you can have one angle then not show everything,
Yeah,
and you don't always know what happened before
right.
they're having to do physical force, but many agencies train, and that comes down to training and how to de-escalate. That's what it's called, de-escalate the situation. And so I'm hoping that in the future that we do have better community relations, because it's key to being able to do a good job.
Yeah. Well, I want to redirect us a little bit because I think that we've talked about a little bit of the doom and gloom side and some of the scary side, but the purpose is talking about getting people in the careers, so we kind of want to redirect this a little bit, I think, into some of the positives and why these things are really something you want to do. I mean, why do I want to do this?
Well, first of all, you have a career opportunity to do a lot of different things. You could start out as a patrol officer. You could end up being police chief. You could end up become an FBI agent. You can go into different branches. You can end up going all over the world like I have, and you can make a difference in countries.
Yeah, this is my last year I can actually apply for the FBI, so I probably should get on that.
Yeah, that's yeah. You better get yeah. And so I think it's a very noble profession, and you feel good about yourself, especially whenever you're properly trained and you are given opportunities. And so you get to see the world if you want to. You get to be part of the community and see how that makes a difference. And I think it's one of those professions where you will, at the end of your career, go, wow, that was great.
Yeah.
And if you like
Say I made a difference, right?
yeah, I made a difference, and it's exciting. And so the benefits, the health benefit. If you look at a job, you can't totally look at this job that way, but they do take care if you get hurt, and and
as you mentioned, they're watching out for your mental state as well as physical state.
right. And many agencies will help you pay for your college if you don't have a degree, or they'll help you pay for your master's degree. And so you can better yourself. They'll help you with learning technology. The latest thing, and I wish I was still on the department because this is what I would be doing next, is they have drone patrols.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, and that's the latest thing that people want to do. And I can't wait to see what technology is going to do in law enforcement. And so that it gives you that skill set. And let's say you work at an agency for 20 years, and then you can vest your pension, and you can go on for a second career. Many of the partners that I had have had second careers.
Mm-hmm.
I've just kind of gradually, my career path's not normal. It's been a little different, especially being the first. But like cybersecurity is big now.
Yeah.
Well, you can
I
learn,
bet that's I bet that's huge.
you can learn cybersecurity while you're an officer. Then you could go to the private sector and make a lot of money. And so it's an opportunity to leapfrog. And then if you're in the military, it's an ideal job to go to.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to point that out, is because I know that a lot of times the military goes directly into public service, and so that
Yeah,
is
I
a
would say there's a
natural
high
progression.
percentage
Mhm.
of officers from have military background.
Yeah, it seems like a natural progression. They're probably already physically, meeting the qualifications. They probably have some weapons training, et cetera.
Right,
so,
right,
yeah.
right. And so, but
I hope they get it in the military weapons training.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Well, it depends on what they do. But,
yeah, but you don't have to have that background.
Right.
And that's why I try to encourage, especially women, that but women. One of the barriers I hear from women all the time is that they're, I'm going to have to run, and I'm going to have to get physically fit. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You don't want that. I'm really fortunate. I'm 6'1", and so I had very few people say no. I just say you're under arrest, and they go yes, ma'am. But you don't want. You want to be able to defend yourself if you need to. And you want to be able to save lives, and if you got to pick people up, so you got to be physically fit.
So basically, that's one good point, is that now you don't have to, you're going to learn how to take care of yourself and defend yourself. Because like me, I'm scared to death to be home alone. Although I'm quite the ninja, I'm pretty sure I'd probably win a fight, but you're actually trained on how to do it.
Absolutely, and training is the key. I cannot tell you how important training is. When I was over in Kosovo, I had the privilege of, I had studied Scotland Yard hostage negotiation, and whenever I was doing the ceasefire negotiation, I had a split second of thinking, it's a long story, but the training that I had at Scotland Yard kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the split second moment of thinking I was going to die. And I've heard other officers talk about that when they're being shot at. I had mortar rounds at me. And what happened is that training kicked in, and it saved my life.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of training that you get. And, most police academies are, the least I've heard is 4 months. Most of them are 6 months. And people say that's a lot of training. Well, it's still not enough. And then,
it should be a lifelong thing, I would
yeah,
think.
and then you have a year of being a rookie. And because it takes, and you don't even learn everything you need to know in that first year.
Well, I'm sure it's a lifelong learning.
It is a lifelong
every day's different,
learning.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, but that training is what, many of the things that you see that go wrong, many times it's the training. The training wasn't correct. They hadn't got as much adequate training. I think now it's really exciting to me. I think because of liability and pressure from the community, I think that more and more agencies are spending the money. I think every police chief and every executive over federal agencies want good training. It's just the budgets. And so, because it's expensive. But when it comes down to, I had some instructors, and I've thanked them for my first police academy, who what they taught me saved my life. And that's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before the show that you really want to talk about women in
Yes.
law enforcement, and that you've heard a lot about women being deterred from going to law enforcement for numerous reasons. Maybe this show. No, but for numerous reasons. And so tell us a little bit about why it makes sense for a woman to do, and what you should do, or why you should combat some of the reasons that people are telling you not to do it if you want to do it.
I've heard, women tell me that their significant others or their husbands or their families don't want them because they're afraid for them to be, they think it's dangerous. And it is dangerous, but if you can work with your significant other, husband or family, to convince them that you have proper training and that this is something you really want to do, I really think you should explore that. Another thing that I hear from women is, I'm not big enough, or so if you're a smaller man, because I had partners I had to drag people off of because they pick suspects will go for the shorter person, and I used to have to get people off of my partners, and they were men, and so your stature is how you conduct yourself. It's really, that's what it comes down to, and so your size, you shouldn't think about that either. But it does concern a lot of women about family life balance. And I'm really proud to tell you, like, for instance, Arlington Police Department, they have, once you become, say you're a woman who you get married and you want to have children, well, they let them job share. So you only work 20 hours a week. At least they used to do that. I haven't checked lately, but that was what the program.
Don't get everybody excited.
Yeah, and then men were able to use it if they need to take care of their elderly parents or something. So it was so women are concerned about their family and shift work. And so you have to work through, there's just different ways of doing that. And you can get through that. And many jobs at the police department are not shift. They are 8 to 5 and weekends off. So, and then I also hear from women that the men are not going to ever accept them. That's not true. I had men it was all men that encouraged me to be the officer I am today, because there weren't any women. And so I think that and we need women desperately. The percentages of women in local law enforcement have gone down since EEOC has not been enforced for, I don't know how many years that's been, but anyway, we don't have, I've been watching the statistics, and I fought the battle for you to have the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and I don't see enough wanting to do it for numerous reasons, but I want to encourage them.
Well, how can we inspire them today?
Well, I think they need to look at the police chief in Dallas.
Right.
Her dad was killed in the line of duty, and she's got 2 master's degrees, and she's now the police chief of Dallas. Look at the difference she's going to make.
Yeah.
And the opportunities that you have are changing.
Right.
And I look forward to the day when they see a police chief that's a woman, and they don't go, that's a woman police chief. I look forward to the day they say, that's just a good police chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can say that in a lot of different
and
aspects.
yeah,
but
and then you have an opportunity to do international work and be a role model. When I was in Haiti, I got to those women in the police department had never seen a policewoman, and
wow.
and because they never were allowed to be police officers in Haiti until we stood up the new police. And in Kosovo, there was a woman who became a police officer, and she ended up becoming the president of Kosovo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I started a program to mentor the women at Kosovo, to help them so they could see how they could achieve. And so, as a woman, you'd be able to be a role model for police women officers all over the world. So there's just so many opportunities, and you would get to.
So kind of as a woman, you get a little bit more opportunity in some ways.
Sometimes there is a requirement for a female because of the sensitivity of the issues.
That makes sense, yeah.
And I'm working on a project in Iraq for women who've been raped by ISIS and have escaped, and the sensitivity, cultural sensitivity, really needs to be a woman to interview them. But here in the United States, and sometimes there are victims that say they'd prefer a woman.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
Even though there are men that are very capable.
Yeah.
And they should. It depends on the victim.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, it sounds like you've worked in both large and small police forces. What are some of the differences between those?
Well, the opportunity to advance is slower in a larger agency. The opportunity in a smaller agency, you got to be able to do everything. I remember there was an agency I knew here in Texas. The police officer was a dog catcher and helped fix the water pipes. I mean, the poor guy had to do everything. So you have to decide on, do you want to move up fast, or do you want to be in an agency that takes a little bit more time? And so that's a big difference. Now, sheriff's department. I've been a police officer and worked at sheriff's office. At the sheriff's department, the big difference is when you go on a call, your backup's like 45 minutes away, and so you have to learn how to police by yourself. Whereas in a city, not in Dallas right now because they've got so short-handed, but it was in Oklahoma. We used to my backup was in a minute to 2 minutes behind me, and I come down to Denton County and it was 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you better handle it yourself,
Yeah.
And there's a big difference in the driving,
So
aspect.
that's actually interesting. So, and I imagine maybe this is for television for dialogue, because you can't have an individual policeman just riding around talking to themselves. It seems like they're always partnered up. So what I'm hearing though is maybe that's not always true. Huh?
Oh no!
They always are on Law and Order.
Right? Yeah. It makes better dialogue.
A lot of agencies use reserve officers, and they can ride with them. And I admire reserve officers because they want to do what I did for free. But many times I never had a partner.
That's interesting.
Unless there was some critical issue. But normally you're by yourself.
That
and
would
you
make
have
it
a
even more
backup.
lonely, though.
But you'll start now I've told you this. You start watching when you see an officer. It'll be very rare that you'll see him with another officer, and if you do see somebody in a car, it's probably a suspect.
Yeah.
Somebody that
Probably, hopefully not in the front seat. but-
No. If they put somebody in the front seat, it's because it's a citizen or something, and they're trying to take them home or something.
Let me ask a question. This is just a curiosity question. So, I have kids in high school and, younger kids. What does the police force do with students? And, like, for example, say you have children that are, like, maybe getting in trouble or doing different things. Like, is there any way you can, like, have them do a ride-along or see different things that, like, happen to people? Or
They could be in the Explorers, and they welcome women and, young girls and boys.
yeah, they
into
both have
that.
issues in teenage years. I mean,
And Explorers is just a really good organization. I can't say enough good things about it. But they're school resource officers, and they're officers that come in and do presentations. And so they can talk to them. And they don't let, for liability reasons, they don't let anybody that's under the age of 18 ride in a patrol car.
right.
But I think it is important to teach young people about respect.
Well, so like for my son, both of my children, I always wanted them to go and see like what it would be like to be homeless, to kind of, hey, you want to work hard, you want to do things and have a certain life. And so that's another thing is like to keep them out of trouble. Like, do you have them do something with the police so they can see what real life things happen if you don't make good decisions?
Well, I would pay attention to a lot of agencies have community outreach, and they do drunk driving seminars, and they show what the effects of alcohol.
I've seen
are.
the things where they do like the mock disasters,
Yes.
which are, I think, really eye-opening for students and the community, really.
Yeah, and Plano just did one on active shooter and what does a citizen do. And so any kind of safety thing that they might have available, then I think you should expose your children to.
Well, I just have to throw this out there. We were at a meeting earlier this week, and I'm actually going to have them hopefully come on the show soon and talk about an app that's about to come out, Deputize America. And that's actually one to help individuals kind of get more involved and bring back the Good Samaritan type
Yes.
things to where you can have first responders that are police, but you can also do this to where people that are close to your neighbors or different people can come help you in a crisis situation. If the police are, like you said, sometimes however far away, especially in smaller town communities. And
The eyes and the ears of the community are essential to
Truly.
an officer. I created and ran 2 Crime Stopper programs, and that was also helpful because if someone saw a crime and they didn't really know what they were seeing, but then we did a reenactment, and then they could put it together, and then they would call in. And that's how we didn't solve it because we were so brilliant. We solved it with the help of citizens.
it's got to be helpful nowadays because everybody's got like the cameras on their houses and things like that, so you
Right.
can actually see a lot more that's going
Right.
on.
Technology is just going to change
Yeah, it's scary.
so much how more efficient law enforcement can be. But with that, you also have the bad guys trying to. You always have.
There's always the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, I call it. We're reactive instead of proactive, and we always. And the bad guys have a lot more time on their hands than we do.
So we only have a couple minutes left
Yes.
of the show. I told you it flies
Wow,
by.
goes
by fast.
I know it does. It seems like it
Well,
just started.
yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about, if I was somebody who wanted to get into law enforcement, what
Yes.
steps would I take to do that? And like, what's the best way to get in? And I say that because a lot of times whenever I talk to people about careers, it's like getting a referral in is always what I consider the best way in.
Yeah.
How does that work in law enforcement? Or tell us a little bit about that.
I first recommend that they do a ride along to before they go through the whole process to find out that's really what they want to do.
Right.
And once they're hooked on that, then
Because they're going to be hooked, right?
They're going to be hooked. Either you're going to love it or hate it.
Yeah.
I used to run an internship program in Denton County, and I put all my interns in the patrol car, and either they come back and go, no, or they come back and go, that's the coolest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Okay. But okay, so once you've identified, then you need to decide on, do you want to be in your community? I chose to not be in a community where I'd be arresting my high school classmates.
Because you knew you would.
I just
Or maybe you wanted to arrest some of them. I don't know.
yeah, I didn't want to be somewhere where I, had to do that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I know a lot of people do. And so you have to decide on where you want to be because right now it's wide open. One of the biggest issues in law enforcement today is recruiting and retention of officers.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're doing this because I know even Dallas County, a lot of counties are really struggling to find people to move into law enforcement. It's every kid wanted to be a cop. What happened,
Right. And so then once you do that, then the community relations division of the call and find out what are the requirements, what tests, what do I have to prepare. Do everything that you can, become physically fit. Don't get traffic tickets. Don't do drugs. I know that sounds real basic stuff, but they're going to do a drug screen on you, and they're going to check out all these things. So you can't have a bad background for them to. But most of the time, people need to get physically fit, unless they were an athlete or something, and they were staying physically fit. But once you do that, your chances of becoming an officer now are greater than I've ever seen. Whenever I started, you had to be on a list and you had to wait, and it was and sometimes it does take 9 months to a year. But I used to go through that 9 months to a year and then have to wait another year, and it's not that way anymore.
Is there things that you can do to prepare yourself to move into it? So what I mean is like, if you're going to you have the rookie part, but like, what can
Yes.
you do? Say you have to wait 9 months to a year. What can you do to help yourself prepare during that 9 months to a year to move into law enforcement?
Make sure you have an education if
Yeah.
you haven't completed it. see if there's
Join the military?
yeah, well, that's really not a bad idea because many agencies, the testing, you get extra points if you've been in the military, so you get like 5 extra points, and so that helps you get selected. I think you should stay very current on what's going on. Oh, that's the other thing that I want to mention. Once you become a police officer, you need to be involved in professional organizations. I'm very involved in the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and the colleagues I've met and the training I've had has changed me,
Yeah.
and it's improved me. So in that year while you're waiting, you might have to do a job that's not as fun because you're waiting. But if you keep, technology, keep up with technology, keep up with, if you don't have your degree, get that degree. If you have it, maybe get a certification. There's all kinds of certifications in cybersecurity, homeland security, that will just help you
Yeah,
become
we
a
want the
better
best
officer.
of the best in cybersecurity these days. We definitely want to get those.
Absolutely, absolutely.
To
The bad
fight that
guys
war.
are,
Yeah.
the bad guys are already having fun with it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember I used to hire ethical hackers, and I'm like, this is an interesting name. Like ethical hackers.
Right, the
I
white
like
hats.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Yeah.
the white lie. I mean, it's the same, you know. It's just-
Yeah.
So we are really, really close to the end. So just if you want to tell us a little bit about how do people, if people have questions, would you be willing to chat with them or anything? So-
Absolutely. Well, I guess we'll have to figure out how to do a contact information.
Well, anybody can, if they want to get a hold of Lynn, they can reach out to us on the www.j2bradio.com. There is actually a spot to email for referrals and that kind of thing. So if people have questions or they want to send anything over to you,
I welcome it.
Yeah.
I really want to have
if you have a hostage situation, just give us a call.
I would not be the person I am today. I have been so privileged, and because of my law enforcement background, my master's degree, I was selected by the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M, and the president, 41, paid for my master's degree.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I would have never been selected. I was the first a police officer, and I would have never been selected if I hadn't studied at Scotland Yard. And the president was very nice to me and very good. And that all is a result of my police work. And then in the textbook, one of the massacre investigations that I was involved in was part of a case study in a textbook.
Well, I
Nothing's
think-
cooler than that.
yeah, I
and you
mean-
get to be part of history.
You're reading your bio, which I'll put out there for everybody. I mean, she's got an amazing background, Lynn Holland, awesome opportunities. And so I guess women in police force and men, get opportunities like this to do the wonderful things that you're doing. So we thank you for your service and what you've done for us, for sure. And we've got to go ahead and wrap up, though. So I know there's so much more to talk about. We'll have to have you come on because there's definitely some other shows on this topic we want to have. So we'll let you do it in the near future.
Thank you for letting me talk about what
Yeah.
I believe in and what my calling is.
And so if there's anything that should inspire you to move into, police force, just looking at her face right now and watching her expression about how much she truly means that this meant to her is inspiring enough for me, I think, that, the difference that she's made. So real quickly, before we do go, I wanted to tell everybody that, again, on the J2B Radio website, if you go to that website, I'm actually in a position right now where I'm helping a company with hiring positions, and we have a lot of positions in engineering. So this is another job type topic. So I just want to throw it out there. So I need some mechanical engineers. I need some electrical engineers. I need some mechanical engineer project managers. I need drafters, all sorts of positions. So we have a ton of positions at this company. So if you would, just write us on the J2B Radio referral email address that you can find on the website. And then thank you for tuning in today. Again, this is Journey to Business with Melissa Walker and
Jeff Camino.
yay. That's good. But feel free next time to call in anytime, 214-431-5062. Write that down so you can call us next week because we didn't get any calls today. No. But you can check us out every week, Thursdays at 7 p.m. We are part of Fishbowl Radio Network. And goodbye.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right, we're still on Facebook Live, so we got to say bye, Facebook.
Bye,
everybody.
Facebook.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of silly. You got to do a
kinda hard
dance
to
real
know
quick.
which
Do a little
camera to
dance
roll.
move. Okay, all right, cool. I always get a dance move. And I forgot to do this.
She's good.
Yes,
You're good. You guys do good together.
Back to music.
This is also Chair Talk. my show, Police Talk 101, every Tuesday from 7 p.m.